Hello, my name is Gabriel Slivka, and today I will be doing a social history presentation on the history of early 20th century hats. Hats have been used for various things throughout the years, from them being a social status to them being used for ceremonial conditions, or even just as they are today, being a fashion accessory. Today, we will look over a few of the most influential hats of the 20th century. The schoolboy's cap. The schoolboy's cap was one of the first popular hats in the 20th century. The schoolboy's cap was an all-around cap. It would be used, people would use them when they're hunting, or they would be used for tweed suits. So this hat is similar to how the baseball cap is nowadays, how it's really just a hat that everyone can use, and it's not meant for one thing or another. It's kind of just an all-around hat. So this made it really iconic that many people were able to use it, because it wasn't only the rich that could use it, or it wasn't only the poor people that could use it. It was something that everyone could use and enjoy. The cliché. The cliché was a hat that women would wear that had the shape of a bell. Milliner Reba invented the hat and marketed it as a hat that was essential to the women's outfit. This hat kind of took off, not almost as like fashion trends do, except it lasted longer than just a normal trend. See, because when more people start using it, and oh, that person looked good wearing that hat, then they would be naturally drawn to wearing the same hat. That's kind of what happened with this hat, is that people would look at other people and they would be like, oh, and the more people that would use it, more people would want to buy it. Communication. Hats did more than just cover the face from the sun or other things. They were communication devices, letting people know if you were, for women specifically, if you were single, taken, or married. They did this by the bow shape, so if it was looser, it would mean a certain thing, whereas if the bow was tighter, it would mean another thing. So hats did more back then than just cover your face. The boater. The boater hat was originally invented in the 1890s, but it really became popular in the 1920s. It was a hat that boaters would wear that was semi-formal. There were versions both made for men and women. The boater's hat was very popular because, unlike the schoolboy's cap where it was used for everything, this was used for specific people, but it was a wide majority of people. So people would use it when, just like in semi-formal events. So they wouldn't just use it for going to school, or they wouldn't just use it for going to a business meeting, but they would just use it for their everyday lives, which was a big portion of their life. The bowler. The bowler has a rounded crown and a hard round top. It was invented by Thomas and William Bowler, who invented the hat for gameskeepers so that it would not hurt them when tree branches fell on their heads. So it's kind of a funny story how this came to be, but when somebody came inside of their shop and asked for a hat, that could come when they were hunting, when they would hit their head on a branch, or a stone would hit their head when they were chasing after a deer, say, perhaps. They wanted a hat that would cover their face. They wanted a hat that would work as a normal hat would, that would look good, but also one that had a rounded, hard top, so that when they would hit their heads on something, it wouldn't hurt as bad. So it was almost like a shield. It helped with work. Hats not only were they good for style, but they helped with work. Just like how we discussed with the bowler hat, it changed how the hats kind of evolved. Instead of them only being for fashion, it allowed hats to be used for work environments instead of only just looking good. So this opened up a whole new range and variety of people, because people didn't only want them for style, but they wanted them for their work. And it became kind of like an essential, kind of like how if you're in construction, a hard hat is essential today. That's kind of how the bowler hat was. And other hats did the same thing. The fedora. The fedora could be the most popular hat that's ever been made. It was originally worn by both sexes, but eventually by the 1920s became a masculine item. It was so popular because it was worn by nearly every occasion. People that wore the item included business executives, gangsters, detectives, journalists, and Hollywood actors. So I actually have a fedora right here that you can see. And as you can see, it looks really nice, right? But it also, like they said, it could be used for every occasion. So it was almost like, if you will, souped up schoolboy's cap in the way that many people could use it of different things. So it wasn't only for rich people, it wasn't only for gangsters, but it was something that everybody could use and everybody could enjoy. This was the thing that made the fedora really take off and that made people still know what a fedora is today because it was so iconic and popular that it just kept going past, and throughout the years, people still remembered it. It was a status symbol. Hats were also made as a status symbol. For instance, if you were to wear a silk top hat, people would think of you typically as a higher power than a schoolboy's cap. This is very important for the history of hats, is that it wasn't only like something that people would wear kind of like a belt or something. Like typically people don't look at people's belts and say, wow, that person has a lot of money, right? But that's something that people would do for hats. So people would look at it and they would be able to know what this was and how important they were to the economy. Therefore, it made people, even if they weren't that important to the economy, it still made people want to buy them to get that significant feeling. The silk top hat. People wore the top hat in the 1850s, my bad, I'm sorry, but they really took off during the 1940s. They were a symbol of respect and were worn by the upper class. It often symbolized wealth because characters such as the Monopoly Man and Scrooge McDuck wore them. Now, there were other versions of the top hat made in the past. However, in the 1850s, that was the first time that a top hat made of silk became a thing. So everyone wanted to get it since it was kind of like the new thing. And it slowly progressed in the 1850s, but then once it went to about the 1940s, it really took off, and that's when everybody started wearing them. Also, since it was very successful because of characters such as the Monopoly Man and Scrooge McDuck, because when people looked at it and they looked at those characters, people would associate silk top hats with wealth and money. So people would want to wear those hats more because they believed that if they were to wear one, they would become more successful in their lives. So although many people only think of hats as being a fashion accessory, hats allowed people to communicate, help in their work, and stated people's status. So I hope you learned that today, that hats in the past, even though they may not do this today, but hats in the past have actually helped people get work, and they helped people with their work, and they helped people, get married and everything, because it allowed people to state different things that were outside of it. So it was almost reading in between the lines. So if you were to see somebody with a schoolboy's cap versus a silk top hat, you would know, oh, that person is typically more successful. So it really just influenced the hat and the culture and the fashion entirely during the 20th century. So thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you learned something about hats today. Thank you.